Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keeping Up With Conspicuous. I know we've had a lovely long Easter break and everyone's sort of back up and running. So we're very lucky to have pinned down both guests. So first of all, we've got my director who is above me, Rob Watchman, who heads up Conspicuous, who will be co-hosting with me today. Quite nice to have another person. And then we are also joined by the lovely Elliott Young. I actually think I need to point the opposite direction. I always get this wrong. Who is the CTO for the EMEA region in Dell Technologies. So thank you so much for joining us today. As I said, it's been quite hectic with Easter and everything. So nice to have you both on. But yeah, for those who don't know you, Elliott, and for those who are watching, let's have a quick introduction to you and who you are and a bit about your background.
Yeah, hi Lucy, how you doing? It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Well, my background actually started out in retail banking many years ago in IT for Lloyds Bank, and then after that moved into consulting. Spent many years in consulting, specialising in media and technology and financial services, and then ended up at Dell Technologies. And here at Dell Technologies, I am the CTO for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And my role covers the entire portfolio of pretty much any kind of IT that you'd want to buy, because Dell has such a huge portfolio. But I spend most of my time talking to customers about AI, and in particular the newest type of AI, which is generative AI. It's the thing that everyone wants to be a part of, wants to have some capability in, and it's a fascinating topic.
Perfect. I mean, yeah, it's lovely to hear sort of where people come from and where they've ended up. And how long have you been at Dell for now?
Ooh, must be about 15 or 16 years, I think. It's incredible. I never actually intended to be at Dell for that amount of time, but I had a couple of different roles and really enjoyed it. And I enjoy being at the forefront of technology, because within Dell, because we're at the start of the chain, we create things and you get to see new technologies before anyone else gets to see it. And then as a manufacturer, we train up consultancies, we train up partners, and they get to see this new technology, and then those partners then spread it out to all of the end customers and distributors and things like that. So I quite enjoy having access to this kind of technology, just to see the most incredible things that are coming out next.
Absolutely. And it always keeps you on your toes, this industry, because you're constantly having to keep up to date with new tech. And I can imagine your role has probably evolved quite a lot over time. And as you said, you've now got to this stage where the majority of your role is speaking to customers about AI and generative AI. So obviously from your perspective, AI and generative AI has emerged. We know it's sort of been there for a fair few years, but it's really come out of the woodworks now, and everyone's sort of coming to the realization that it's in play and there's no way of getting out of it now. But what is your view on it from sort of an enterprise level? I know you just sort of briefly touched upon that, but how have you found it being in an enterprise company like Dell?
I think it's a whole new type of IT is probably the best way to think about it. In years gone past, if we were to say to somebody, why do you need a new IT system? Why do you need a new CRM system? Or why do you need a new billing system? Then the typical answers you'd get back would be to reduce cost, or to improve efficiency, or to reduce risk. And yes, generative AI can do all of those things, and it absolutely will help you do that. But something new, which it's completely different to other IT systems, is that generative AI enables you to create business processes that were previously completely impossible to do. Even if I said to you, look, have unlimited money, or have go and recruit another 10,000 employees or something, you probably still wouldn't be able to do some of the capabilities that generative AI gives you. And I think once organizations start to get their head around that way of thinking, they look for use cases that enable this new business process or this new capability, and they realize that, number one, my competitors can't do that, and number two, the customers would actually absolutely love it if they had access to this kind of new product or new service. So I think that's the most exciting part of it. That's the bit which I enjoy the most, because if you can find a whole new capability, then for large enterprises, this is a way that you unlock like a kind of step change in things like the share price or in revenue increase. It's not just a small incremental change. You're actually looking for a big jump up, and that's absolutely possible with generative AI.
And Elliott, are you already seeing within your client base clients taking advantage of Gen AI and beginning to see this step change?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most obvious way that we see it is within Dell Technologies ourselves. I mean, it has impacted our business to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of benefit. Now, of course, Dell is not like other organizations. Even in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, we deliver $100 million worth of IT projects every week. And you can imagine, to get to that run rate, we have lots of projects that start off at the top, they're all getting planned, but only a few of them actually come to fruition during the week. And then you get to the next week and you take that cycle all over again. So when we've deployed things like internally digital humans or automatic content creation or automatic recommendation, or looking at how we improve the efficiency of the technologists such as programmers and developers, it's absolutely massive benefit that we've had, and we want to take that technology and give it to other organizations so they can get the same benefits. There are some organizations which are naturally quicker than others to get the benefit, I'd say. Financial services is an obvious one. Retail is definitely another obvious one. Anything to do with marketing, those kind of industries, they seem to be the earliest adopters getting the biggest benefits. But in the future, I think we'll see it a lot more common in things like public services, healthcare, and other areas where you need to take a slightly different approach to deploying generative AI, but you're still going to get massive benefit.
Absolutely. So I think one thing you touched upon, which is hugely important, is how yourselves who work for Dell have had to adopt it, and your internal processes have sort of adapted to this change too. And I think in order to be able to sort of speak to your customers and explain the big pros to Gen AI, you have to be able to be a user of it as well. And I think that's one thing, Rob, that we've sort of learned as well, isn't it? That we've got to start actually using these processes and trying them out ourselves to see the real benefits of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to, I think a safe way to deploy this technology is to think about, if the users are your own internal users, how will they get benefit from it? So how can you protect them from things like hallucinations or data leakage or other problems that you might anticipate? And once you've got this idea of how to run and operate it within your own organization, you can then start to use AI for customer-facing roles, or you can start to deploy more complicated AI patterns, which hopefully we'll talk about later. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Find a nice, safe, easy place to deploy it internally so you get some experience of running and operating it, and then quickly expand on that solution.
So we touched on within Dell. Our clients are predominantly in the ERP CRM space. Are you beginning to see them adopted and see it being pushed into the ERP CRM solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I look at it, there are three main ways that I see organizations doing that. The first way is they integrate the CRM systems with what I call a hero AI. And this name came from the idea of, certain websites have a hero banner at the top, where there's typically a human person's face that draws your attention there, and you get this key message across. That's how you land the key message, the hero banner. Well, hero AI is kind of similar to that, in that when you see that solution, you just look at it and you think, oh my goodness, there's no way that could have been created with any other kind of IT system aside from generative AI. So I'll give you an example of that. Maybe you see a digital human, and the digital human is having a full-on conversation with you, and it's an absolute expert on all of your customer interaction history. every contact you've ever had with an organization, and you can ask any question like, when's my delivery coming, or what's the status of my complaint, or can you recommend what the next product is that I should buy? Having that kind of interaction with a digital human is really, really sticky. And what we found is that there are some unexpected benefits from that. So there's a government organization that we helped deploy a digital human because it could talk 40 different languages. And in that part of the world, they needed the ability to have multiple languages covered to deliver their government services. And what they found is that people were engaging with a digital human, not only to ask about how do I pay my water bill or where do I get a new parking permit from, but they were actually staying within the conversation for 30 minutes, an hour at a time. And it turned out that these digital humans have become really sticky, and people want to make them feel like they're talking to a human, and therefore they start to build a relationship. And it kind of addresses this epidemic that we've got at the moment of loneliness. So the most lonely people were connecting to a government department initially to talk about where to get a parking permit from, and ended up talking for an hour or 2 hours because they enjoyed having an interaction with something where there was no limit. It wasn't costing them anything. They felt that they could talk to someone. So in that kind of case, that's the first of the three, like a hero AI where you see it and you know that that must only be AI. So you could start with your organization by building that and integrating that to your CRM system. The second approach you can take is that you can wrap up the capability of an AI and embed it, code it into your existing flow of a customer relationship management system. So let's take a healthcare setting, like a patient information setting, where you have the equivalent of a CRM system is this information system where, let's say, your GP, your doctor, sends you to a specialist who's going to investigate some kind of health concern. And what typically happens is when the specialist has reviewed the patient, they then write a letter back to the original doctor who referred them and say, okay, this is the name of the patient, the date of birth, the medication they're on, their history, and here's a treatment plan. And in the system, they click submit to send that letter electronically to the original doctor. But with AI, what can happen is when they click submit, instead of sending the letter, the AI can read the letter. And it says, this looks like a great treatment plan you've outlined for this patient, but have you also considered this, this, and this? And the specialist can look at that recommendation from the AI and say, actually, I really like that recommendation, I'm going to include it, or I don't agree with it because I'm the human in the loop and I'm going to decide to not include that. But whichever decision the human makes, they then hit submit the second time and a much better letter goes back to the original doctor. So can you imagine if you're implementing that from a CRM system or a patient information system point of view, it's fantastic. It's probably the best outcome you could get because you've directly got the benefit from generative AI in your core production system. But in order to do that, you had to change your core production system, and someone had to pay for that, and somebody had to test it, and somebody had to deploy it, and somebody had to train up the users. And do you see what I mean? So there are pros and cons of how you deploy generative AI. So that gives us this third design pattern. And the third design pattern is kind of in between the two of them. You can say, well, I'm not having a hero AI because it's going to be completely standalone. I don't want to mess with my core systems right now. What I'll do is I'll deploy robotic process automation. There are lots of different options for robotic process automation. On the Microsoft platform, for example, that would be Power Automate. Dell is basically the biggest, most successful partner from Microsoft, so I'm quite happy talking about their solutions because they completely integrate. But if you want the best of both worlds, then what you say is, let's say it's a different business, a different CRM system, and this business has 10,000 active customers. And you want the AI to be able to analyze the behavior of each customer and write an email as if it was coming from their account manager to that customer in the future. And maybe the email says, here's 3 different ways where you could be more productive, or how you could use our product, or something that you want to, which is very specific to that one customer that you want to talk to them about. Now you could go out to all of your account managers and say, you need to write an email to every single customer, and it needs to be different. Or you could use robotic process automation to create one AI for every customer. And all it does is loop around and create the AIs. So you've got 10,000 customers, you create 10,000 AIs, and these AIs just sleep on the system until they're required. So let's say, for example, tomorrow a customer comes along and they interact with your environment, and a record pops up into the CRM system or the ERP system that triggers the robotic process automation. That wakes up the AI, and the AI says, well, I'm going to look at that interaction, I'm going to look at the previous 10 interactions, and based on that, I now know enough to be able to write an email to that customer. So what it does is it writes the draft email, automatically stores it on SharePoint somewhere, or in a CRM system. It automatically writes a custom card in Microsoft Teams, and it pops up the card on Teams desktop, because everyone in the organization already uses Teams. You don't have to install any software, you don't have to modify your production system. And there's little Teams pop up saying, Wilma just interacted with the company. I've got these 3 recommendations. Click here if you want to see the draft email that I've written, and then click here if you want to send that email. So it's really simple, really easy approach to embedding AI without having to create a hero AI, without having to update your production systems, and really, really quick to deploy, because you're essentially not changing any of the software that the end users are already using. And I think for most people, that's kind of surprising, because if I say to them, we'll help you create 10,000 AIs because you've got 10,000 customers, they'll probably have a heart attack and say, how can I do that? But once you see the design, and once you know it's all built in robotic process automation, it doesn't matter if you're a bank and you've got 1 million customers, you can have 1 million AIs. So it's an incredible opportunity, and I think there's a lot that can be done with that.
It's interesting, because the three of those are brilliant examples, and different ways clients can go, or people, business owners can go. All 3 of them, you could argue, are taking away people's jobs, but you could also argue that all 3 of them are saying that it's increasing productivity of the company without necessarily taking away any jobs. It just means that the jobs slightly change, because they become overseers of what AI is up to, or what the system is doing, and sort of the backstop, the checkers. So it increases productivity. What have you seen so far in the market? Have you seen AI beginning to take away jobs? Are you seeing jobs evolve?
I haven't really seen it take away jobs. The approach that we take is more about augmenting people, as you said. It's like giving them some kind of superpowers to be able to do things that were never previously possible. I mean, in that example that we talked about just now, was there already somebody in your organization whose job it was all day was to sit there and just do 10,000 emails? Probably not. So you didn't get rid of anyone in that particular case. What we're looking to do is to enable people to actually do less work. And when you do less work, less of the things which take up their time, which distract them from their core role or their key responsibility. And so you're giving them back hours in the day to be able to spend time doing things that they should be doing, and probably things that they actually enjoy doing.
So less admin.
Well, if they don't enjoy doing admin, then take the admin away. If they enjoy doing it, let them do it. But what's actually if they're in sales, what's going to help them sell more? If they're in customer service, what's going to help them spend more time with customers? If they're in security, what's going to help them manage, detect, and respond quicker? So these are the key areas. There's no intention for AI to get rid of jobs, and I think in many areas, brand new jobs are popping up all over the place that you wouldn't have seen before. Like,
Absolutely.
who on their CV has the line, I'm a prompt engineer that specializes in prompting AIs for CRM system? I mean, 12 months ago, that wouldn't have even existed as well. And now they're calling out themselves to actually make sure that they understand prompt engineering, fine tuning, model training, reward enablement. There's a new thing what was the new thing that I saw today? Creating of data flywheels. You've heard of that one?
I've come across that one.
You need a data flywheel. Who knew that you didn't? Who didn't know that you need a data flywheel? There's a concept of a data lakehouse. Every organization should have a data lakehouse if you're going to be using this kind of technology, but do they have it? No, perhaps not.
Yeah.
So, do you see what I mean?
It's very interesting.
The whole area is evolving so quickly that I don't think there's going to be a problem for technologists in terms of job reduction.
That's certainly what we're hoping for.
Yeah, and I personally think there's so many pros to it, but as you sort of touched upon, Elliott, it's how you individually want to use it to your benefit. And that's what's going to either make or break your job. I think everyone sort of has to get on board with it. And if they don't get on board with it, they're sort of going to be left behind. And that's when you may see more of these cons to AI arise. But I think if people can use it, it's very subjective of how you're going to like it or not like it. And I think people, once they understand it, can use it to their benefit by tailoring it to themselves. You know, you can have business processes, but you can tailor it to you too.
That's a really important point, because if you're in an organization where the leaders of the organization say, oh, we don't know about this generative AI thing, so for now you shouldn't use it, it's completely unrealistic. You know, the users will go to ChatGPT and they will start typing in questions like, please can you rewrite this email for me, or please can you update this report, and what have you done in that case? You've now leaked sensitive, confidential information up to a cloud or to a public provider, which is a really bad idea. So it's much better to start off and say, I think organizations should say, you know, we will give you access to a ChatGPT-like experience, but related to your own company. So within that, you can just ask it questions and you get benefit from that. And then the next level will probably say, right, after that, we're gonna do prompt stuffing. So we'll take, for example, customer history and put it into an AI, and now you've got an AI that's an expert on customer history. And then after that, you might say, well, we'll turn on RAG, and now we'll give you access to 1,000 documents in this knowledge base, and you can ask the AI any question about that. You know, so you're going up step by step until you get all of the benefits from all of the use cases. But the key thing is, if you don't start now, you don't have a platform to build on. You don't have anything you can expand on. And if you think that your competition is not doing this, it's very unlikely. As I would say, your competition probably has already started doing this if they haven't already given access to their employees to this kind of technology already.
Yeah. And I think the leadership part is very important. And I think while we've sort of touched upon it, it's beneficial to bring this up now. But, you know, leadership within businesses, as you said, they've sort of got to embrace it. Otherwise, it can potentially cause those further issues down the line. And as you said, your competition will be embracing it.
Right.
But also that leadership aspect is going to start to shift a little bit. And I think we're starting to see that because, you know, obviously one of the things is managing humans, but you are going to have to manage the AI as well in these robotic processes. And I don't know what your view is on this and how you sort of see that going, but I think we are starting to see that shift a little.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we internally within Dell, we even had conversations around what is the right span of control number. So typically with a leader in the organization, I'd expect them to have a team of, let's say, 15 to 20 people as a minimum, and then the organization would be built on those kind of span of control chunks. But in the future, we might say, well, if you're a leader and you're running a team of 15 people, and maybe each of those have 15 people underneath them, then how many AIs should you be managing? Should it be 15 AIs? Should it be 50 AIs? Should it be 1,000 AIs? I mean, this is a weird concept to get your head around, but what is the span of control of AIs? And it might sound like a strange thing to talk about, but one of the biggest developments you should probably look out for in the next 12 months is the uptake of agentic AIs. And with agentic computing and AIs, you take an AI and you give it a certain superpower or a certain ability, and you allow it to interact with other AIs in a kind of team. And often the user has no idea that there's actually a team of AIs all collaborating together to answer their question, because they might just ask one question and say, can you do some research on this topic? In the background, you might have an AI, which is the project manager AI. You've got some which is a technical writer, one which has the ability to scrape a web page and read the web page, another one that can do analysis. And so you can have a team of 5 or 6 different AIs all collaborating together. And when they come up with a really good answer, with a very high quality answer, they've burnt through way more tokens than you would have used if you just asked one question and got one answer. But the quality of the response is absolutely phenomenal. And this is great for, as I say, research, or for report writing, or for analysis. And so the question you've got in that case is, how far do you let these teams of agents go out and do things? Do you allow them to do a search on your CRM system and search for any customer by their last name and their date of birth, for example? Maybe you do. Maybe you say, well, there's no danger of an AI being able to do that because it's my private data. I control the agent. It's running on some Dell infrastructure somewhere, so we know it's not going to leak onto the internet. And so there, you're all good. Or do you say, actually, I'll give the AI the ability to update a record? And by updating a record, you might, I don't know, take a customer and promote them to a new tier, or you might give them some kind of benefit, or the AI might take some action that incurs cost for the company. And in that case, you really need to be sure that you trust what the AI is doing,
Yeah.
or what the teams of AI are doing. And if the AI gets it wrong, then whose responsibility is that? Is that the leader of that department with the right span of control? So you get all these new kind of things to think about. But I think it's important to have this vision, to have this kind of aiming point to say, where's your organization going? How are you going to enable these new business processes, new ways of working by embracing AI in a safe way?
Yeah, and that leads us on to, who's responsible when things don't go quite according to plan, and which company could be responsible, because it might not but just be a leader or a team leader or a team within the organization. It could span a bit further than that. It could go
Yeah, absolutely. And eventually there will be regulations that will help in those kind of areas. The problem is AI is moving on so quickly that it's very difficult for regulators to keep up. I mean, if you look at regulation like GDPR in Europe, it says things like you should have the right to be forgotten. That's great if you've got a database and there's 10,000 people in the CRM system and you want to forget person 622, you just delete the record. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You're not going to. There's no record. There's no database. How do you tell an AI to forget someone if you've already learned about them? The regulation is completely out of date, and probably we'll get to at some point where you'll have an AI trying to keep up with the AI's generating regulation being reviewed by another AI. It's going to be quite an interesting future.
So do you think, like, from the regulation side of things, obviously we know there is a little bit of a lag with that and trying to keep up with how quick and fast paced AI is growing. Do you think there's always going to be that slight lag, or do you think it's going to get on top of it? What do you think the future holds from that perspective?
Well, I absolutely think that there should. I definitely think there should be regulation.
Yeah.
There is a constant debate about who do you give access to this kind of power and capability to. And if you're a big cloud provider with a frontier model, they give you access in a way where you have to pay for every single word that the AI reads and every single word that it outputs. And in fact, sometimes you even have to pay for every word that it thinks about. And it's this per token cost. And
Wow.
in that particular case, those organizations have all of the power, in that they can make the AI think what they want it to think and respond in whichever way they want it to respond, which is good and bad for consumers. And then you've got this other approach where there's an open source model where you can just download an incredibly capable model like Llama 4, for example, download it, put it on a Dell server, which could be in a cloud, it could be at a partner site, could be in your own data center. And then suddenly you've got the capabilities of one of these frontier models, but you don't have to pay. And you can use it as much or as little as you want because it's your server. There's no charge for the large language model. And so if you want it to review the customer history of every single customer every month, you can do that. If you decide I want to review it every single week or every single day even, you can do that because there's no charge. You don't have to pay anything extra to do that. All you're paying for is electricity to run the server. And so there are pros and cons of both approaches. But now, if you take a free to download large language model, which is incredibly capable, then what happens if you give that to, I don't know, an organized crime gang?
Yeah.
They start defrauding people, and then how do you respond to that? If you've got in the old days when people sent out spam messages, the spam message would be the same, and all a protection system had to do would be to detect the same string of text or the same fingerprint, and it would know, oh, I know it's a spam message, so I'm either going to block it or delete it or forward it on somewhere. Nowadays, you have AIs that are rewriting every single spam email to be completely different for whoever's receiving it, and it's even more difficult to detect. And so how do authorities deal with that? Well, one of the things, they have entire fleets of AIs which respond to those customized messages. And so what happens is then the organized crime gangs then spend resources responding to that AI. So you've got an AI from a good side
AI
with an AI from a bad side, and all they're doing is burning up energy. But the key
it's
thing
like
is,
the angel and devil.
yeah, but the key thing is that when you do that, the good AIs will respond back in a particular way. They'll say things like, oh, well, here's my bank account number and sort code, and they'll have one digit missing deliberately. And that'll be really frustrating for the bad actors, because they'll say, they're immediately, their AI will respond and say, hold on, you didn't send me all your bank details. And of course, you've now tied up more resources that they've spent on it. Or they'll say something like, well, if you want to release 10 million in funding, just send £500 to this bank account. And the bad guys will then reveal their bank account details, which can then be given to law enforcement to say, this is guaranteed, must be a bad actor because it came from spam. So these new capabilities are opening up, and I think it's very difficult for regulations to keep up with that. But it's our responsibility to take some of those considerations into account. I think even if there's no regulation that say you should or shouldn't do something.
Definitely. I think most people know AI in the right hands, brilliant. AI in the wrong hands, awful. And it's sort of that black and white. And I think from the regulation side, my instant thoughts were, obviously, we know the financial sector and the healthcare sector have really, adopted and gone into AI, etc., because it can be so beneficial. But then my automatic thoughts are, with regulations that might not be up to scratch just yet. Obviously, it's such sensitive data in both those industries that you just hope that for those industries' sake, it does sort of get up to scratch with everything and stuff, because there is those slight concerns.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we don't necessarily need to wait for those regulations, because what we can do is we can implement AI in a fail-safe mechanism. So you might say, the design principle of this IT project for this AI is, do not make an existing system any worse than it already is. So let's say, for example, it's a doctor's surgery, you've got a backlog of tests or appointments that are still outstanding, and somehow the AI starts processing through those. If it starts reviewing case histories and it decides this is a really important case and you should bring the appointment forward, if it brings 50 appointments forward and 10 of them actually you didn't need to bring those forward because it wasn't as bad as the AI thought, you might have failed, but you haven't failed in an unsafe way. Because all that's happened is 10 people got to see the doctor quicker than they would have otherwise seen the doctor. So as long as you have these kind of design principles in your head when you're implementing this type of AI, I think it's you should be doing it straight away.
For sure. And one of our comments, just while we're on this topic, because it's quite relevant, and we've got one other question I'll loop back to at the end, but we've got a comment from someone called Joshua, who's sort of pitching into this conversation, but he just said, regarding AI governance with organizations, I think audits of the data sets from which the AI is pulling its decision-making algorithm are necessary. If the data is not capable of driving value creation, the AI will not be capable either.
Well, that's an interesting topic for us to discuss, and we could probably have a whole another hour to deal on that. But when what I'd say to that is, when you start out with the idea that you're not going to use any data, so just give people access to an inferencing where they ChatGPT equivalent, where you've got a pre-trained model. Now, there's no way you're going to audit what that pre-trained model was built on, because a pre-trained model, you made your decision when you selected your model. Okay, so most models, which certainly are available as open source, they will tell you where they got their data from, and in some cases they will release some of the data so you can inspect it, but in many cases you'll never get access to see all of that data. So there's some judgment for that. The second part is, when you then deploy your next use cases, you pick use cases where the use case is not sensitive to bad data. So if I say to you, create an AI which is going to read your CRM system and make 5 sales recommendations based on the last meeting you had with the customer, then you say to all your account teams, take your team's transcript of the call you had with the customer, dump it into the CRM system. The AI will read the last 5 transcripts, it will summarize them together. It'll look at all the products that you sell, and then it will make a match to say, now what product should you sell next? Now, if in that data you've got the customer's name wrong, or you didn't write down, you didn't record an action in your notes, or the transcript went a bit crazy, is that going to prevent the AI from making a really good sales recommendation? No, it doesn't care about typos or things like that, because that use case is not sensitive to data errors. Now consider the next case where you want to create an AI that's an expert on all of the data on SharePoint, and your company's been running for 10 years, you've got 10 years of SharePoint data, and 10 years ago somebody's created an article on the internet that said, here are our product features, and then yesterday somebody created an article saying, here are our product features. They're going to be completely two different lists. If you just take that data and you load it into the AI, you've created a problem there, because you've made a contradiction. The AI is going to read one document and say, hey, this document says the product features are this, or this document says the product features are something completely different. So which one's correct? And it'll probably hallucinate somewhere in the middle. And maybe that's one of the areas that the person who asked the question is referring to there, is that in that particular case, that use case is very sensitive to having good, curated, well-audited data. And I absolutely would not just throw any data into that kind of scenario, because you're making a rod for your back. So yes, separate your use cases into areas where either you don't need data, or the data is not sensitive to inaccuracies, and then other areas where absolutely you must have fully audited, fully understood, well curated data sets.
Perfect. Now,
Data is key.
Don't wait to have perfect data. If you think you're going to have perfect data, you may never get to deploying your AI. You have to get a move.
This is true. Right. So just before we wrap up, because I'm conscious of time, just if you had a quick answer to this one, that would be great, Elliott. But a gentleman called Rory has asked, what skill sets do you believe will be needed to make sure the market is aligned to the rise of AI projects? He said specifically project management, if you have an answer to that, but if not, maybe a bit more generalized.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you've got all the traditional project management frameworks like old school Prince2 and Waterfall and the new agile methodologies. I think those are still relevant. There's still a place for them. One thing I'd say for project managers who are looking to deploy generative AI projects is that one thing I've seen is that projects that start out with an end goal in mind actually end up delivering something slightly different at the end, and that's okay. There was a project that we did recently where, in fact, it was related to the example I just gave, where the AI was asked to summarize the last 5 customer meetings for every single customer. And in our data set, and I think we had 1.2 million customers, so we wanted to have 1.2 million summaries. Okay, that project started out, it started building it, but when we got to the end of the bit where it was generating amazing summaries, we then said, hold on, if you've got this summary, what else can you do with it? Can you predict what the customer's going to buy next, or can you work out if there's a customer satisfaction problem, or can you, and the focus of the project changed to actually not just doing summaries, it's now going to deliver amazing sales recommendations, and that was a small change that happened at the end. And if you'd been using a traditional project, a project manager probably would have said, we don't have the time for that, it's not in, we don't have the cost for it, it's not in scope, so you're not going to do it. But in this particular case, it's absolutely critical for us to pivot to that new outcome, because that's where the value was for the real AI. And I think that having that kind of skill and having that kind of awareness will be a new thing for lots of project management specialists and professionals. So that was just a small kind of thing to look out for there.
Thank you. Well, as I said, I am conscious of time, and I know we've all got jobs to get back to. But Elliott, if you had any sort of final key takeaways for the viewers, what would that takeaway be?
I think a couple of things. One thing would be, if you haven't already started and given your users access to generative AI, then that should be the priority. We've got so much more capability coming up in the next 12 months, which the industry is going to release and announce. There's Dell Technologies World coming up, which is a massive global event where tens of thousands of people turn up. We've got so many announcements coming up that if you don't have a platform already, you won't be able to take advantage of any of that stuff. So you'll be just scratching your head thinking, why couldn't I take advantage of that? That's one thing. The second thing is that some customers have surprised me. There's this new mantra going around. I don't know if you've heard it. People used to say cloud first, and now they don't say that anymore because they realize they're spending way too much money in a lot of the cloud solutions that they adopted. But now they replaced it with a new phrase, which is AI or die. And when I heard that the first time, I thought, oh, that's a bit extreme, isn't it? But no, this is really the way organizations are looking at it. They're thinking there's an existential threat to their organization will not continue unless they have this ability to use generative AI to help their business processes, because they know that their competitors will do that if they don't do it. So yeah, it's a fascinating world, and I'm really looking forward to all the new stuff that's coming out in the next 12 months.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And Rob, thank you for co-hosting with me today. It's nice to have some company, and I know this is a topic you're very interested in.
Yeah, well, Lucy, it's great to be involved. And Elliott, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you spent with us.
You're welcome. Good to see you again, Rob and Lucy. Yeah, thank you very much.
No worries.